You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He's over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I see we're still talking tunnel fiasco, and the suggestion is, as much as we were talking about it last week, and as bad as this may look for the premier, it could get worse?
Oh, absolutely, because there's a very interesting development that occurred over the weekend. And it's something that we quite literally have not seen before since the advent of the Coalition Avenir Québec. Québec Solidaire, who have been a pretty effective thorn in François Legault's side from the get-go, is going to retable legislation calling for a school-wide, all levels of education policy to deal with sexual assault, sexual violence, whether it's in elementary, high school. There already is a policy in place for CJADs and universities. But as we've seen, these incidents, unfortunately, are not limited to those two levels of education, which in and of itself is a great thing. But why are they retabling it? Well, they're retabling it because they have the support of the Parti Québécois and the Quebec Liberal Party. And we're not talking about a kind of transpartisan. We had, that glorious moment when they adopted the medically assisted death legislation. All the parties were on side. It was a vote of conscience, and everybody was very emotional. This is an example of the three sitting opposition parties uniting forces, representing 60% of the population of Quebec, going after a specific issue that the sitting government has not been able to deal with, or not been able to deal with well. You remember that everyone's favorite education minister, Bernard de Hanneville, said, don't worry about, it's terrible, these things that we're hearing about, high schools and elementary schools, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a toll-free number, and they can report, incidents of sexual violence, sexual assault. And, of course, a lot of people right then said, no, that's not the great thing to do because kids don't usually dial 1-800 numbers. But even if they did, La Presse told us by testing the number the next day, nobody was picking up.
I can't even.
It was a voicemail.
Yeah. What a sham.
Okay, but this is what I find to be very important. When did somebody go out for a beer up in QC and sit down with two other representatives from the parties and said, listen, we can't let this go on. We can't keep dividing our efforts. They all have an agenda. And I have a sneaking suspicion this is not the first time you're going to see this now. They know that after the tunnel fiasco, and yes, I think we can actually refer to it with capital letters now, after we discovered that, after we confirmed that this government is smoke, mirrors, and improvisation, I think they've realized that if they work together, even if they'll be at each other's throats in 3 years in the election campaign, if they work together, they can do a lot better job putting themselves in some serious polling position, no matter what party it is, than sort of like nattering against each other. And I have a belief that, the tunnel to one side, this is the kind of thing that's going to keep François Legault awake at night, because when you have all the parties speaking with one voice to address an issue that is a problem for the government, you couldn't create a worst case scenario for Mr. Legault and company. Let's see how long this is going to last, and let's see how many other issues that perhaps the opposition can find consensus on and really bring pressure to bear on this government to address.
In theory, as I hear you say this, I'm thinking this will be a wonderful thing to finally see some pressure brought on this government, especially now that they can no longer, and I hate saying it because it seems like we've been out of it for so long, but since the pandemic, but the fact of the matter is, Jim, they managed to hold off on any kind of serious issues because of it. And now all of a sudden, here's a big one blowing up in their face. I just wonder at the end of it all, there's a 90-seat majority at play here, and as angry as some of the Quebec City MNAs might be, or the CAQIS might be because of the tunnel, how much threat is there really to the government here?
Well, nothing in the immediate. We don't have an election for another 3 years, but the government's, listen, the CAQ is a populist government, i.e. it has to remain popular. If it keeps making unpopular decisions and it finds itself, dropping in the polls, all of a sudden that 90-seat majority may not seem as certain, especially if you're an MNA who got elected perhaps on the strength of promising tunnels or promising something else, which wasn't delivered on. I mean, what's funny here, and I don't take this the wrong way, Aaron, but I know lots of times I'll describe this very grim situation. And out of the blue, you'll say, but what if this and this and this happened? Sort of an unlikely series of circumstances where everything suddenly became okay. This is what appears to be happening right now with these three parties. They have never agreed on legislation so quickly and so quietly that they can turn around and say, yeah, we're going to be retabling this with the support of the entire opposition. It's one thing for Francois Legault to say he speaks for all Quebecers, which is a crock. It's another for him to have to address proposed legislation from a combined political force that represents the majority of Quebecers, 60% of Quebecers, and turn around and say, well, no, this is not what Quebecers want. And this, as I say, is a nightmare scenario for Francois Legault.
Well, and a great scenario for the rest of us, because, you know, this is better government. This is, with a united force, to me, this is a much better approach, that he is held accountable more and he can't just plow through. That there will.
Yeah, and I'm not riding a unicorn here. I don't think they're going to be, girlfriends forever. But my point is, I think they will find common grounds. There's enough that this government gets wrong that they will find a common ground on a sufficient number of occasions for this kind of united front to be displayed. And I assure you, if I was surprised by the headline that I saw, I'm sure that the CAC were surprised by it as well. And those 90 seats, there's a lot of newbies in there. They might be scratching their heads as well, saying, well, what exactly did I get myself into?
Why aren't we seeing popularity polls? That's interesting to me. And speaking of which, we know that Trudeau is going down, and the coronation is happening the same time as the Liberal Party convention.
Hey, listen, I know, I think it's just a matter of bad timing. But on the other hand, we're talking about optics, and we talk about the optics of the public, and we talk about the optics of question period. But here's another set of optics which I think is far more important, which is specifically you've got the Liberal Party of Canada is having a convention. Hell, Hillary Clinton's going to be there. She'll be chatting away with Chrystia Freeland. However, the leader of the party will only be able to give a keynote address because then he's got to hop on the plane and go over to Blighty to go to the coronation, which I'm sure, humans being humans, will be the topic of some conversation this coming weekend. I mean, it starts Thursday night, it ends on Saturday. But Liberals, read polls, whether they're rank-and-file party members, whether they are MPs. Things are not going very well right now, and the fact that they are kind of, in the corridors and in the back rooms, will be talking about the future of the party, while the boss, quite frankly, I think we know, will be playing a piano somewhere in London and having lots of selfies done, is not the most opportune set of circumstances for Justin Trudeau. And you look at those numbers. I was just going over the 338 Canada site, looking at all the polls that have been conducted since the beginning of the year. And apart from Atlantic Canada and kind of in Quebec, Liberals are in trouble everywhere, and especially in Ontario. I mean, the margins are narrow, or are actually growing. They were narrow, but now they're growing. And even if the Conservatives do nothing but keep their mouths shut and stand still, which probably I think would be an even better policy for them, Trudeau's now innate unpopularity is they cannot help but profit from it. So it's going to be, I think, an unfortunate set of circumstances for Justin Trudeau, unless he surprises me and the Liberals and does a big FaceTime live from Westminster Abbey. But apart from that, I don't think this is a very good scheduling situation for Justin Trudeau this weekend.
Yeah, I just wonder, Jim, and you're right, the scheduling, there's a conflict. It's not every day they crown a king, so it's not as if you had a whole lot of choice here. But I wonder, too, if part of the thinking is, you know what, it's not as if there's anyone within the federal Liberal Party who's necessarily going to try to stage a coup over the weekend at a PLC convention. We know that if he decides not to run, yes, Chrystia Freeland is there, Anita Anand might be there, but otherwise he kind of gets to call the shot on this, doesn't he?
Well, of course he does, but don't forget, coups, don't happen like that. And sometimes coups have indeed been planned at party conventions while the boss was away. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I will reiterate, I have done this numerous times in the past, is saying if a federal Liberal tells you right now that they're not nervous about the party's political future, they are lying.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that it's as simple as that. And quite frankly, I think one source of that nervousness is the governance of Justin Trudeau.
James Mennie, the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adam out.